The photograph trembled in Elliot Harper's hands, its edges worn from years of secrets. In the grainy image, Lila, his wife, stood beside a stranger, their smiles too intimate, their hands too close. By midnight, in the heart of Willow Creek, Oregon, that photograph would unravel everything he thought he knew about love. Elliot's boots crunched on the gravel outside their modest craftsman home, the porch light flickering like his resolve. 3 years of marriage, countless shared dreams, and now Thea's single image that screamed betrayal. He'd found it tucked inside Lila's old journal, hidden in the attic among boxes of forgotten memories. The stranger's face was unfamiliar, but the timestamp was recent, 6 months ago. Who was this man? And why had Lila never mentioned him? Inside, the house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Lila sat at the kitchen table, her auburn hair catching the glow of a single lamp. She didn't look up as Elliot entered, her fingers tracing the edge of a silver locket she always wore. "You're late," she said, her voice soft but guarded. "I found something," Elliot replied, his throat tight. He slid the photograph across the table. Her green eyes flicked to it, and for a split second, something guilt, flashed across her face before she masked it with a frown. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her tone sharp now. "The attic. Your journal." Elliot leaned forward, searching her face for the truth. "Who is he, Lila? And why does it look like you're hiding something?" She pushed the photograph back toward him, her hand steady but her voice unsteady. "It's not what you think. You're jumping to conclusions." "Then explain it," he pressed, his heart pounding. "Because right now, it feels like I don't even know you." Lila stood, turning toward the window, her silhouette framed against the rain-streaked glass. "You wouldn't understand," she whispered. "Not yet." The words hung heavy, a wall between them. Elliot wanted to reach for her, to pull her back into the life they'd built. But doubt gnawed at him. He'd always trusted Lila's quiet strength, her fierce loyalty. They'd met at a community theater in Portland, where she played Juliet with a passion that stole his breath. He'd been a stagehand, content in the shadows, until her light drew him out. They'd built a life together, or so he thought. Now, every memory felt like a question mark. The next morning, Elliot drove to the local library, the photograph burning a hole in his pocket. Willow Creek was a small town, the kind where secrets didn't stay buried long. He needed answers, and he couldn't trust Lila to give them. The librarian, Mrs. Carter, a gray-haired woman with a knack for gossip, recognized the man in the photo immediately. "That's Julian Tate," she said, peering over her glasses. "Moved here a year ago, keeps to himself. Runs a small art gallery downtown." Elliot's stomach churned. An art gallery. Lila had mentioned visiting one months ago, claiming it was for inspiration for her freelance graphic design work. Had she been lying even then? He thanked Mrs. Carter and headed for the gallery, his mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. The gallery was a narrow storefront with a sign reading Tate's Visions. Inside, the air smelled of paint and cedar. Julian Tate stood behind a counter, a man in his late 30s with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to see too much. He greeted Elliot with a polite nod, but there was a tension in his posture, like he knew why Elliot was there. "I'm looking for answers," Elliot said, holding up the photograph. "About this." Julian's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked to the image. "You must be Elliot," he said, his voice low, almost regretful. "Lila warned me you might come." The words hit like a punch. "Warned you? What the hell is going on?" Julian hesitated, then gestured to a small office in the back. "You deserve the truth," he said, "but it's not what you think." In the office, Julian sat across from Elliot, his hands folded tightly. Lila and I aren't lovers. He began. We're working together. On something. Dangerous. Dangerous. Elliot's voice rose. What are you talking about? Julian leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. There's a group in this town. Powerful people. They're hiding something. And Lila's been helping me expose them. That photo was taken during a meeting. We were undercover. Elliot's head spun. Undercover. Powerful people. This sounded like something out of a movie. Not his quiet life with Lila. Why didn't she tell me? He demanded. She wanted to protect you, Julian said. The less you knew, the safer you'd be. Elliot's hands clenched into fists. Protect me. By lying. By sneaking around with you. It's not like that, Julian said, his voice firm. Lila loves you. But she's in deep. Elliot. We both are. The room felt too small. The air too thick. Elliot wanted to believe Julian. But the photograph, Lila's secret side, all pointed to something darker. What are you exposing? He asked finally. Julian's eyes darkened. A conspiracy. It's tied to the town's history. To missing people. To money changing hands in the shadows. Lila found evidence documents. Recordings. But we're being watched. Elliot's heart thudded. Missing people. Willow Creek had whispers of disappearances over the years. But he'd chalked them up to small-town rumors. Could Lila really be tangled in something this big? And why hadn't she trusted him enough to tell him? Show me, Elliot said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. If Lila's in trouble, I need to know everything. Julian nodded, pulling a locked box from under his desk. Inside were files, photographs, handwritten notes, and a USB drive. This is what we have so far, he said. But be careful. Once you're in, there's no going back. Elliot took the box, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. He didn't know if he was ready for the truth. But he knew one thing. He couldn't lose Lila. Not to secrets. Not to danger. Not to anything. As he left the gallery, the rain had stopped, but the air felt heavier than ever. He glanced at the photograph one last time, Lila's smile haunting him. Whatever she was hiding, he'd find it. And he'd fight for her even if it meant tearing their world apart. Elliot drove home with the box of files in the passenger seat, its weight a silent accusation. The streets of Willow Creek blurred past, each familiar corner now tinged with suspicion. Lila, his anchor, his home, was entangled in something he couldn't yet grasp, a conspiracy that felt too big for their small-town life. At home, Lila was gone, leaving a note at the studio. Back late. Her graphic design work often kept her out, but now Elliot wondered if that was another lie. He spread the files across the dining table, their contents spilling like fragments of a broken puzzle. Photographs of unfamiliar faces, grainy surveillance shots, and pages of financial records with names circled in red. One name appeared repeatedly, Margaret Voss, a local councilwoman known for her pristine reputation. Elliot's eyes lingered on a photo of Voss, a severe woman in her 50s, shaking hands with a man whose face was obscured. The timestamp matched the one on Lila's photograph with Julian. A chill ran through him. Was this the powerful people Julian mentioned? He plugged the USB drive into his laptop, heart racing as a folder opened with audio files labeled by date. The first recording was Lila's voice, low and urgent, speaking to Julian. They're moving money through the gallery, she said. Voss is the key. If we can trace the accounts, we'll have proof. Julian's voice replied. We need to be careful. They know someone's watching. Elliot paused the recording, his breath shallow. Lila's voice, so familiar, now carried a weight he'd never heard. She sounded scared but determined. like she was carrying a burden too heavy for one person. Why hadn't she come to him? He'd always been her safe placer, so he thought. He spent hours poring over the files, piecing together fragments. The conspiracy seemed to involve a network of local elites, politicians, business owners funneling money through shell companies. Some documents hinted at connections to missing persons cases. Names Elliot vaguely recalled from town gossip. A teenager who vanished 2 years ago. A drifter last seen near the river. The deeper he dug, the more sinister it felt. The front door creaked open, and Lila stepped inside, her coat damp from the evening mist. She froze when she saw the files spread across the table. "Elliot," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" "Finding the truth," he said, standing to face her. "You're working with Julian Tate. You're chasing some conspiracy, and you didn't tell me. Why, Lila?" Her green eyes welled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I wanted to keep you safe," she said. "This isn't just about me or you. It's bigger. People have disappeared. Elliot. People have died." "Then why lie?" His voice cracked. "I'm your husband. I deserve to know." Lila sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "I didn't want you to get hurt. These people, they don't play games. If they find out you're involved." "Involved?" Elliot laughed bitterly. "I'm already involved. You made sure of that when you kept this from me." She reached for his hand, but he pulled back. The hurt in her eyes cut him, but his own pain was too raw. "Tell me everything," he said. "Now." Lila took a shaky breath and began. She'd stumbled onto the conspiracy a year ago while researching local history for a design project. An old article about a missing girl led her to financial discrepancies in the town's records. She'd confided in Julian, a friend from her theater days, who was already investigating similar leads through his gallery. Together, they'd uncovered a web of corruption tied to Voss and her allies, who used their influence to silence anyone who got too close. "I didn't mean to shut you out," Lila said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought I could handle it." Elliot wanted to believe her, but the distance between them felt like a chasm. "And Julian?" he asked. "What's he to you?" Lila's face softened. "He's a friend. Nothing more. He's risked everything for this. Same as me." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. Elliot looked at the files, then at Lila, her face a map of fear and resolve. He wanted to trust her, but the photograph still burned in his mind. Was she telling the whole truth? Or was there more she wasn't saying? "I'm in this now," he said finally. "Whether you like it or not. So what's the next step?" Lila hesitated, then nodded. "We need to get into Voss's office. There's a ledger there, proof of everything. But it's risky." Elliot's pulse quickened. Risky didn't begin to cover it. But if Lila was in danger, he couldn't stand by. "When do we go?" he asked. "Tomorrow night," she said. "Voss will be at a town hall meeting. It's our best chance." As they planned, Elliot felt a spark of their old connection, a way they used to tackle problems together, like fixing the leaky roof or laughing through a botched dinner recipe. But this was different. This was life or death. And deep down, he wondered if their love could survive the truth they were about to uncover. The night was thick with fog as Elliot and Lila parked a block from the town hall. Willow Creek's streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath. Elliot gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, while Lila checked the lockpicking tools in her Baga skill she'd learned for a theater prop, now turned to a darker purpose. "You sure about this?" Elliot asked, his voice low. The plan was simple but insane. Break into Margaret Voss's office, find the ledger, and get out before anyone noticed. But the stakes: exposure. arrest, or worse hung over them like a storm cloud. Lila's jaw tightened. We don't have a choice. That ledger ties Voss to the money and the disappearances. It's our only shot. Elliot nodded, though his gut twisted. He'd always seen Lila as his partner, his equal, but now she felt like a stranger leading him into a world he didn't understand. They stepped out of the car, moving silently toward the town hall's back entrance. The fog cloaked them, but it also hid any eyes that might be watching. The lock gave way under Lila's steady hands, and they slipped inside. The building was dark, save for the faint glow of emergency lights. Voss's office was on the second floor, a corner room with a reputation for being impenetrable. They moved quickly, their footsteps muffled on the carpeted stairs. Elliot's heart pounded, every creak of the old building sounding like a warning. Inside the office, Lila went straight for the desk, while Elliot kept watch at the door. The room smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, a stark contrast to the chaos of their mission. Lila rifled through drawers, her movements precise but frantic. It's got to be here, she muttered. Elliot glanced back, his eyes catching a framed photo on the wall. Voss with a group of smiling locals, including the man from the photograph with Lila. Who's that? He whispered, pointing. Lila froze, her hands on a locked drawer. That's Daniel Reese. He was part of the group we're investigating. He disappeared last month. Elliot's blood ran cold. Disappeared. Like the others. Lila nodded, her face pale. We think Voss had him silenced. He knew too much. Before Elliot could process this, Lila pried open the drawer with a letter opener. Inside was a black ledger, its pages filled with cryptic entries, dates, amounts, initials. Lila's eyes lit up. This is it, she whispered, tucking it into her bag. But then, a noisy faint click from the hallway. Elliot's hand shot up, signaling silence. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Lila shoved the drawer shut, and they ducked behind a filing cabinet just as the door opened. A flashlight beam swept the room, pausing on the desk. Elliot held his breath, his hand brushing Lila's. Her fingers squeezed his, a silent plea to stay calm. The beam lingered, then moved on. The door closed, and the footsteps faded. Elliot exhaled, his body trembling. We need to go, he whispered. They slipped out the way they came, the ledger heavy in Lila's bag. Back in the car, Elliot's hands shook as he started the engine. What now? He asked. We take this to Julian, Lila said. He knows someone who can decode ETA journalist in Portland. But we have to move fast. Voss will know it's gone by morning. The drive to Julian's gallery was tense, the fog pressing against the windows like a living thing. Elliot kept glancing at Lila, her face set with determination but shadowed by fear. He wanted to ask her again why she'd kept this from him, why she'd chosen Julian over him, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he focused on the road, on the ledger, on the truth they were chasing. At the gallery, Julian was waiting, his face grim. He took the ledger, flipping through its pages with a practiced eye. This is more than we hoped for, he said. But it's dangerous. Voss has people everywhere. Elliot's patience snapped. Then why are we doing this? If it's so dangerous, why not go to the police? Julian's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. Because the police are part of it. Half the department's on Voss's payroll. The words landed like a blow. Elliot looked at Lila, hoping for reassurance. But she only nodded. He's right, she said. We're on our own. Julian handed them a burner phone. Use this to contact me. No personal phonus theory probably tapped. We'll meet the journalist tomorrow night. But until then, lay low. As they left, Elliot felt the weight of the burner phone in his pocket, a lifeline and a burden. He and Lila drove home in silence, the ledger's secrets burning between them. When they reached the house, Lila turned to him, her eyes searching his. "I'm sorry," she said, "for all of it." Elliot wanted to forgive her, to pull her close and pretend none of this had happened. But the truth was a wedge between them, and he didn't know if love could bridge it. "Just don't lie to me again," he said, his voice raw. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. But as they stepped inside, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the conspiracy they'd uncovered was closing in around them. The next day, Willow Creek felt like a different town. Every glance from a neighbor, every passing car, seemed to carry a threat. Elliot and Lila stayed inside, the ledger hidden under a loose floorboard in the attic. They barely spoke, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. Elliot couldn't stop picturing Lila with Julian, their shared secrets cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. By evening, they drove to Portland, the burner phone their only connection to Julian. The journalist, a woman named Sarah Klein, worked for an independent paper known for exposing corruption. They met her in a crowded diner, the kind where no one paid attention to hushed conversations. Sarah was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She took the ledger, her fingers tracing the entries as if they were a map to buried treasure. "This is explosive," she said, her voice low. "Voss is funneling money through fake charities. But it's more than that. These initials D, R, T, M, they match missing persons. If we can link this to their cases, we've got her." Elliot's stomach twisted. "Link it how?" Sarah's eyes flicked to Lila. "You said Daniel Reese was onto something before he vanished. Did he leave anything behind? Notes? Recordings?" Lila nodded, pulling a small notebook from her bag. "He gave this to me a week before he disappeared. It's coded, but I think it's a list of Voss's contacts." Sarah took the notebook, her expression grim. "I'll need time to cross-reference this. Stay off the grid until I contact you." As they left the diner, Elliot noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its windows tinted. He grabbed Lila's arm, pulling her into an alley. "Don't look back," he whispered. "We're being followed." Lila's face paled, but she nodded, her hand slipping into his. They wove through Portland's back streets, the SUV's headlights flickering in the distance. By the time they reached their car, Elliot's heart was racing, his mind replaying Julian's warning. They're watching. Back in Willow Creek, they hid at a cheap motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and stained carpets. Lila sat on the bed, her knees pulled to her chest. "I didn't want this for us," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I could fix it, make things right." Elliot sat beside her, the distance between them shrinking for the first time in days. "Why did you do it alone?" he asked. "Why Julian and not me?" Lila's eyes met his, raw and unguarded. "Because I love you too much to lose you. Julian, he's been through this before. He lost someone to this fight. I thought he could handle it." Elliot's chest tightened. "Lost someone?" "His partner," Lila said softly. "Evan. They were together for years, investigating corruption in another town. Evan got too close, and he didn't make it." The revelation hit Elliot like a wave. Julian wasn't just a friend, was carrying his own grief, his own fight. And Lila had chosen to shield Elliot from that same fate. He reached for her hand, his anger softening into something more complicated: love, fear, forgiveness. "I'm in this now," he said. "No more secrets. We do this together." Lila nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Together," she whispered. The burner phone buzzed. shattering the moment. It was Julian. Sarah's been attacked, he said, his voice tight. She's alive, but they took the ledger. You need to get out of town. Now. Elliot's blood ran cold. Who's they? Voss's people, Julian said. They're closing in. Meet me at the old mill by the river. I have a backup plan. They grabbed their things and left the motel, the night pressing in around them. The old mill was a crumbling relic on the edge of Willow Creek, a place kids dared each other to explore. When they arrived, Julian was already there, his face drawn. He handed them a USB drive. This is a copy of the ledger, he said. Sarah sent it to me before the attack. It's everything we need. Elliot took the drive, its weight heavier than the ledger itself. What now? He asked. We go public, Julian said. There's a rally tomorrow night. Voss is speaking. We leak the ledger to the press. Expose her in front of everyone. Lila's eyes widened. That's suicide. She'll know it's us. Julian's jaw tightened. It's our only shot. If we don't act, they'll bury this in us. Elliot looked at Lila, her face a mix of fear and resolve. He knew the risk, but he also knew they couldn't run forever. We're in, he said, his voice steady. As they planned, Elliot felt the weight of their choice settle over him. Tomorrow, they'd face Voss, the town, and the truth. And whatever happened, he and Lila would face it together or lose everything trying. The rally was held in Willow Creek's town square, a sea of faces under strings of fairy lights. Margaret Voss stood on a makeshift stage, her smile polished as she spoke about community and progress. Elliot and Lila stood at the edge of the crowd, the USB drive burning a hole in Elliot's pocket. Julian was nearby, blending in, ready to signal the journalist who'd agreed to break the story. Elliot's heart pounded as he scanned the crowd. He spotted two men in dark jackets, their eyes too focused, their movements too deliberate. Lila, he whispered, nudging her. We've got company. She followed his gaze, her face tightening. Voss's men. We need to move fast. Julian's signal came a subtle nod from across the square. Elliot slipped the USB drive to a young woman in a press badge, a contact Julian trusted. She disappeared into the crowd, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. If everything went according to plan, the ledger's contents would hit the internet within the hour. But then, chaos erupted. A scream cut through the crowd, and people scattered as the two men in jackets pushed forward, their hands reaching under their coats. Elliot grabbed Lila's arm, pulling her toward an alley. Run, he shouted. They sprinted through the narrow streets, the men's footsteps echoing behind them. Julian appeared at their side, his face grim. They know, he panted. Someone tipped them off. The alley dead-ended at a chain-link fence. Elliot cursed, scanning for an escape. Lila pointed to a rusted gate, barely visible in the shadows. They scrambled through, emerging near the river, its dark waters glinting under the moon. The men were too close. We split up, Julian said, his voice urgent. They can't catch us all. No, Lila snapped. We stay together. Elliot's chest tightened. He wanted to agree with Lila, but Julian was right. Go, he told Julian. Get to the journalist. Make sure the story breaks. Julian hesitated, then nodded, disappearing into the night. Elliot and Lila ran along the riverbank, the men's shouts growing fainter. They ducked into an abandoned warehouse, its windows shattered, its air thick with dust. For a moment, they were safe as they could be. Lila leaned against a wall, her breath ragged. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I dragged you into this. Elliot took her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. You didn't drag me. I chose this. I chose you. Her eyes searched his, and for the first time in days, he saw the woman he'd fallen in love with, the one who'd laughed with him in the rain, who'd dreamed of a future together. He kissed her, fierce and desperate, pouring every ounce of love and fear into it. She kissed him back, her hands clutching his jacket like a lifeline. The moment was shattered by a crash, the warehouse door being kicked open. The men were here. Elliot pulled Lila behind a stack of crates, his heart racing. Stay quiet, he whispered. The men's footsteps echoed, their flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. Come out, Harper, one called, his voice cold. We just want to talk. Elliot's hand tightened around Lila's. He knew they didn't want to talk. They wanted the USB drive, the ledger, and anyone who knew about it gone. He scanned the warehouse, spotting a broken window high on the wall. It was a long shot, but it was their only one. He gestured to Lila, and they crept toward the window, careful not to make a sound. The men were close, their beams sweeping inches from their hiding spot. Elliot boosted Lila up, her hands scraping against the jagged glass as she climbed through. He followed, wincing as the shards cut into his palms. Outside, they ran, the river's edge their only guide. The men's shouts faded, but Elliot knew they weren't safe yet. They reached a small dock, where a rowboat bobbed in the water. Get in, he said, helping Lila aboard. As he rowed, the town's lights faded behind them. Lila's hand rested on his, her touch grounding him. Do you think Julian made it? She asked. I hope so, Elliot said, his voice tight. If he didn't, this was all for nothing. The river carried them toward Portland, toward safety, or so they hoped. But even as they escaped, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that the conspiracy was bigger than they'd imagined, that Voss's reach extended beyond Willow Creek. And deep down, he wondered if their love could survive the weight of what they'd uncovered. The rowboat glided through the dark, the river's current pulling Elliot and Lila toward Portland. The night was cold, the air sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Lila shivered beside him, her face pale but resolute. They'd escaped for now, but the weight of the ledger, of Julian's fate, pressed down on them. We can't go back, Lila said, her voice barely audible over the water's lap. Not until it's over. Elliot nodded, his hands aching on the oars. If Julian got the ledger to the press, Voss is finished. If not, he didn't finish the thought. The alternative was too grim. They reached a small marina just before dawn, tying the boat to a dock and slipping into the shadows. Portland's skyline loomed in the distance, a promise of safety they couldn't yet trust. The burner phone was dead, leaving them cut off from Julian. Elliot's mind raced. Had Julian made it? Was Sarah alive? And what about the men chasing them? They found a payphone outside a gas station, and Lila dialed Sarah's number, her fingers trembling. The call went to voicemail. Sarah, it's Lila, she whispered. We're in Portland. Please, tell us you're okay. As they waited, hiding in a nearby alley, Elliot's thoughts turned to Julian. Lila's words about his partner, Evan, echoed in his mind. Julian's fight wasn't just about justice, it was personal, a way to honor the man he'd loved and lost. Elliot felt a pang of guilt for his jealousy, for assuming the worst about Lila and Julian. But the hurt lingered, a reminder of how little he'd known about her secret life. The payphone rang, startling them. Lila grabbed it, her face lighting up. Sarah, she breathed. You're alive. Sarah's voice was strained but steady. I'm okay. They roughed me up, but I got the ledger's copy to a colleague. It's online, now every major outlet's picking it up. Voss is done. Elliot exhaled, relief flooding him. But Sarah's next words chilled him. They're looking for you. Voss's people. They know you're in Portland. Lila's eyes met Elliot's. Fear mirrored in their depths. What do we do? She asked. Lay low, Sarah said. I'm sending someone to get you. Stay put. They waited in the alley, the minutes stretching into eternity. Elliot pulled Lila close, her warmth grounding him. We're going to make it, he said, more to convince himself than her. A car pulled up, and Julian stepped out, his face bruised but alive. Relief washed over Elliot, but it was short-lived. Julian's expression was grim. We've got a problem, he said. Voss isn't working alone. There's someone higher up, someone we didn't see coming. Who? Elliot demanded. Julian hesitated, glancing at Lila. Your brother-in-law, Mark. Lila gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark, her older brother, was a lawyer in Portland, always distant but never suspicious. That's impossible, she said. Mark's family. Family can betray you, Julian said softly, his eyes haunted. He's been funneling money for Voss, covering her tracks. The ledger points to him. Elliot's mind reeled. Mark had been at their wedding, had toasted their future. Could he really be part of this? Why? He asked. Power, Julian said. Money. The usual reasons. But he's dangerous. Lila. He knows we're onto him. Lila's face crumpled, the weight of betrayal crushing her. Elliot pulled her into his arms, his own anger simmering. Mark had been family, someone they trusted. Now, he was another enemy in a growing list. We need to confront him, Lila said, her voice hardening. If Mark's involved, he has answers. Julian nodded. I know where he's staying, a penthouse downtown. But we have to be smart. He's not alone. They drove to the city center, the tension in the car palpable. Mark's building was a sleek tower of glass, its lights mocking their exhaustion. They slipped in through a service entrance, Julian leading the way. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like a countdown to judgment. Mark was waiting, his suit impeccable, his smile cold. Lila, he said, his voice smooth. Elliot, I wondered when you'd show up. You're part of this. Lila spat, her hand shaking. How could you? Mark's smile didn't waver. You don't understand the stakes. Voss was a means to an end. I did what I had to. For what? Elliot demanded. Money. Power. For family, Mark said, his eyes flicking to Lila. You think I wanted this? I was protecting you, Lila, keeping you out of it. By letting people die? She shouted. By betraying us. Mark's face hardened. You're in over your head. Walk away, and I'll make sure you're safe. Elliot stepped forward, his fists clenched. We're not walking away. The ledger's out. The world knows. Mark's smile faltered, and for the first time, Elliot saw fear in his eyes. But before anyone could move, the door burst open, and Voss's men stormed in, guns drawn. The room erupted into chaos. Elliot dove for cover, pulling Lila behind a leather couch as the men shouted orders. Mark stood frozen, his hands raised, but his eyes darted toward an exit. Julian tackled one of the men, wrestling for his gun, while Elliot shielded Lila, his heart pounding. Stay down, he hissed, his arm around her. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. A shot rang out, and Julian grunted, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped through his fingers, but he kept fighting, his face a mask of determination. Lila's eyes were wild, her breath ragged. We have to help him, she whispered. Elliot nodded, scanning the room. A heavy lamp sat on a nearby table crude, but it would do. He grabbed it, waiting for an opening. One of the men turned, his gun trained on Julian, and Elliot swung, catching him in the temple. The man crumpled, the gun skittering across the floor. Lila scrambled for it, her hands shaking as she aimed at the second man. "Drop it," she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The man hesitated, then lowered his weapon, his gaze flicking to Mark. Mark seized the moment, bolting for the door. Elliot lunged after him, tackling him to the ground. "You're not running," he growled, pinning Mark's arms. "Not this time." Mark struggled, his face contorted with rage. "You don't know what you're doing," he spat. "This goes higher than you can imagine." "Then tell us," Lila said, her gun still trained on the second man. "Who's behind this?" Mark's eyes darted between them, calculating. "You want the truth," he said finally. "It's not just Voss. It's the mayor, the sheriff, half the damn state. They've been running this for years. Money, power, control. Voss was just the face." Elliot's blood ran cold. The conspiracy was a hydra, its head stretching far beyond Willow Creek. And the missing people? He demanded. What happened to them? Mark's jaw tightened. Collateral damage. They got too close. Asked too many questions. Lila's hand wavered, the gun dipping slightly. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew and did nothing." "I did what I had to," Mark said, his voice cold. "For our family. For you." "Don't you dare," Lila snapped, tears streaming down her face. "You're no brother to me." Before Elliot could respond, sirens wailed in the distance. The second man took his chance, diving for his gun, but Julian was faster, kicking it away despite his injury. "It's over," Julian panted, his face pale. "The press is outside. The ledger's everywhere." The man froze, his eyes wide with panic. Mark slumped, the fight draining out of him. Elliot tied his hands with a cord from the lamp, his mind racing. The sirens grew louder, and soon, police stormed the penthouse, not Voss's men, but state troopers, their faces grim. Sarah had done her job. The ledger's contents were viral, exposing Voss, Mark, and their network. The troopers arrested the men, and paramedics rushed to Julian, who waved them off with a weak grin. "I'll live," he said, his voice rough. As Mark was led away, he looked back at Lila, his eyes pleading. "I'm sorry," he said, but she turned away, her shoulders shaking. Outside, the night was alive with flashing lights and shouting reporters. Elliot and Lila stood together, the weight of their ordeal settling over them. Julian joined them, his arm bandaged, his face weary but resolute. "We did it," he said. "It's over." But Elliot knew it wasn't. The conspiracy's roots ran deep, and though they'd exposed its face, its shadow lingered. He looked at Lila, her eyes red but fierce, and felt a surge of love mixed with pain. They'd survived, but at what cost? They drove back to Willow Creek, the town now a stranger's landscape. The house felt empty, its walls echoing with the secrets they'd uncovered. Lila sat on the couch, her locket in her hands, and Elliot knelt beside her. "I almost lost you," he said, his voice breaking. "Not to them, but to this wall between us." Lila's eyes met his, raw and vulnerable. "I thought I was protecting you," she said. "But I was wrong. I should have trusted you." He took her hand, his thumb brushing the locket. "We start over," he said. "No more secrets. Just us." She nodded, tears spilling over. "Just us," she whispered. But as they held each other, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that the conspiracy wasn't done with them. Somewhere, in the shadows of Willow Creek, someone was watching, waiting for their next move. The weeks that followed were a blur of headlines and interrogations. Voss was arrested, her empire crumbling under the weight of the Ledger's revelations. Mark faced charges, his betrayal a wound Lila carried in silence. Willow Creek buzzed with whispers, its residents grappling with the truth about their town. Elliot and Lila stayed, determined to rebuild, but the scars of their fight lingered. They sat in their kitchen one morning, sunlight streaming through the window. The photograph that had started it all lay on the table, its edges softer now, its power diminished. Lila traced its outline, her face thoughtful. "I kept this because it reminded me why I started," she said. "To make things right." Elliot took her hand, his heart heavy but hopeful. "You did," he said. "We did." Julian stopped by, his arm still in a sling, but his spirit unbroken. He decided to stay in Willow Creek, to keep the gallery open as a space for truth and healing. Evan would have been proud, he said, his voice thick. "You both reminded me what it's like to fight for something bigger." Lila smiled, a real smile, the kind Elliot hadn't seen in months. "We couldn't have done it without you," she said. As Julian left, Elliot and Lila walked to the river, the place where they'd escaped, where they'd clung to each other in the dark. The water was calm now, reflecting the sky like a mirror. They stood in silence, the weight of their journey settling into something new: understanding, forgiveness, love. "I was so afraid of losing you," Lila said, her voice soft. "Not to them, but to my own mistakes." Elliot pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead. "You didn't lose me," he said. "And you won't." They'd uncovered a conspiracy, exposed a darkness that had festered for years. But more than that, they'd found each other again, their bond forged anew in the fire of truth. The town would heal, slowly, and so would they. The locket around Lila's neck gleamed in the sunlight, a reminder of the secrets they'd overcome. As they walked home, hand in hand, Elliot felt a quiet strength between them. The conspiracy had shattered their world, but it hadn't broken them. They were survivors, witnesses to a truth that had changed everything. And in that truth, they found not just justice, but each other. The river flowed on, carrying the past away. Willow Creek would never be the same, and neither would they. But for the first time in a long time, Elliot believed in their future not just as husband and wife, but as partners in every sense, ready to face whatever came next, together.